You ever spend years giving everything to someone, only to realize that when it's all over, you were surrounded by people who only cared about what was left behind? That's what happened to me. But before I tell you how my siblings betrayed me after our mother passed away, let me know, where are you watching this from? I love hearing from people who've lived through similar family storms. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel, because every week we uncover stories that prove one simple truth. Sometimes blood isn't love. My name's Samuel. I'm 52 now, and for most of my adult life, I was known as the one who stayed. When my father died suddenly, my two younger siblings, Martha and Greg, scattered like leaves in the wind. Martha moved to New York to chase a career in marketing. Greg joined the military, then later married and settled 2 states away. And me, I stayed in our small hometown in Ohio because Mum couldn't be alone. At first I told myself it was temporary, just until she got back on her feet. But months turned into years, and before I knew it, 15 years had passed. 15 years of waking up before sunrise to make her breakfast. 15 years of sleepless nights listening to her breathing in case it stopped. I watched friends move away, start families, build lives. Mine froze in place, anchored to that little yellow house at the end of Willow Street. Caring for her wasn't easy. She had early onset Parkinson's, and by her late 60s, it had taken almost everything from her. Her mobility, her independence, even her memory on bad days. But I didn't see her as a burden. I saw her as my mother, the woman who'd raised 3 of us with barely any help after Dad's passing. So I bathed her, cooked for her, changed her, took her to appointments. I worked 2 part-time jobs, nights at the post office and mornings doing maintenance at the local school, just to make ends meet. Did my siblings ever help? Rarely. Martha would call once every few months, sounding almost inconvenienced. Greg? He'd visit once a year, always around holidays, always for pictures, never for help. And when I'd ask if they could send money for her medications or contribute to home care, they'd say, "Sam, you're there. You understand her needs better than we do," which was code for, "We don't want to deal with it." Still, I didn't complain, because deep down, I thought that when the time came, they'd at least appreciate what I did. I couldn't have been more wrong. By the time Mum turned 80, her condition worsened. I started sleeping on a recliner next to her room, just to be there if she needed help at night. There were nights when she'd wake up confused, whispering for Dad. I'd hold her hand, tell her everything was all right and that I was there. She'd smile faintly, call me her good boy, and drift back to sleep. It was exhausting, but those moments, those little smiles, made everything worth it. When she finally passed away one cold November morning, I felt like a piece of me had died too. For days, I just sat by her empty bed, staring at the indentation where she used to sleep. 15 years of purpose, gone in an instant. I told myself my siblings would come home soon, that we'd mourn her together, maybe reconnect as a family. But grief has a strange way of exposing people's true nature, because before her body was even buried, they showed me exactly what kind of family I had left. The morning after the funeral, Martha arrived with a man in a grey suit, her lawyer. Greg was already there, pretending to be broken up while checking emails on his phone. I was in the kitchen cleaning up the coffee cups from the wake when Martha called out, "Sam, can we talk in the living room?" Her voice was clipped, businesslike. I followed, wiping my hands on a towel. When I stepped in, the lawyer already had a folder open on the coffee table. I frowned. "What's this?" Martha crossed her arms. "The will, Mum's estate. We need to sort everything out." "The will?" I blinked. "She didn't even have much, Martha, just the house, her pension, and—" "Exactly," she interrupted, "and we need to decide how to divide it fairly." Fairly. The word stung. I'd spent 15 years keeping that house standing, paying bills, covering her medical costs. They hadn't lifted a finger. Now they were here, eyes glinting like vultures circling a carcass. Greg leaned back on the couch, arms behind his head. "Come on, Sam, don't make this difficult. We all shared the same parents." I clenched my jaw. Shared, yes. Cared for them equally, no. The lawyer cleared his throat and slid the papers toward me. "Mrs. Hargrove, your mother, updated her will 4 years ago. She left the house to all 3 of you jointly." I felt the ground tilt beneath me. "Jointly?" Martha smiled, that practiced, PR-perfect smile she used when she wanted to look sympathetic. "It's what Mum would have wanted. We're a family, Sam." Family. The word sounded hollow in her mouth. I stood there staring at the papers. "You know I paid the mortgage after Dad died, right? The taxes, the repairs, everything." Greg shrugged. "You lived here rent-free, Sam. It balances out." Rent-free, that's what he said. 15 years of lost wages, sleepless nights, and spoon-feeding our mother. And to them, it was rent-free. I didn't sign. I told them I needed time. They weren't happy, but they left. For the next few days, the house felt heavier, colder, like their greed had poisoned the air. Then, one morning, I came home from work and found a bright orange notice taped to the door, property evaluation pending. That's when I knew they were trying to sell it, my mother's house, my home, the place I'd spent half my life protecting. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a bottle of whiskey staring at the framed photo of Mom on the wall. Her soft smile seemed almost knowing, like she'd seen this betrayal coming. My hands shook as I whispered, "Why didn't you leave it to me, Mom? You knew what they were like." But maybe she hadn't realized how bad they'd become, or maybe she thought love would be enough to keep us together. I decided I wasn't going to let them win, not without a fight. The next morning, I drove to the courthouse and pulled up every financial record I could find on the house. I discovered something they hadn't expected. The deed wasn't entirely theirs to claim. Years ago, I'd refinanced the property in my name to pay for Mom's hospital equipment. That made me a co-owner, not just an heir. When I told Martha and Greg, they lost their minds. Martha called me manipulative. Greg said I'd trapped them. But the truth was simple. I'd saved that house, and now it was saving me. They tried to threaten me with lawyers, but when I showed them the paperwork, their tune changed. Suddenly, Martha wanted to talk things through, and Greg wanted to keep the peace, but I wasn't playing nice anymore. For 15 years, I'd been the quiet one, the caretaker, the one who gave up everything for family. Now, for the first time in my life, I was done being that man. I didn't know it yet, but what they were about to do next would make everything that happened so far look tame. Because when people feel entitled to your sacrifice, they'll destroy everything to take what they think they deserve, even if it means tearing their own blood apart. After that confrontation, I thought things might calm down. Maybe, deep down, I wanted to believe my siblings still had some decency left in them. But when greed seeps into family, it eats everything: love, respect, even memory. 2 weeks later, I came home from my shift at the post office to find the locks changed. My own front door, the one I'd walked through every day for 15 years, wouldn't open. I banged on it until my knuckles bled. Martha opened a side window, smirking. "You can't be here anymore, Sam," she said coldly. "We're selling the house. The lawyer's handling everything." I stood there in disbelief, the cold wind cutting through my jacket. "You can't do this. I live here." "Correction," Greg's voice came from inside. "You lived here." It was surreal, like the floor had been ripped out from under me. Everything inside that house was a piece of me. Mom's old blanket, the rocking chair I fixed when she broke it, the wall with her fading handwriting where she wrote, "My Sammy always takes care of me." And now they were throwing me out like trash. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my truck outside the driveway, headlights off, just staring at the house through the windshield. I could see the living room lights flickering, shadows moving inside, my siblings sorting through her things, my mother's belongings, my memories. That's when I realized they weren't just after the house, they were after control. They wanted to erase me from her story, the same way they'd erased themselves from her life when it mattered. The next morning, I called a lawyer of my own. He was a local guy, someone who'd known my mum from church. I explained everything: the years of caregiving, the refinance, the sudden eviction. He listened quietly, then said something that stuck with me. "Sam, sometimes the law doesn't reward who's right, it rewards who's ready." That hit hard. I'd spent years doing the right thing, but they'd spent their lives getting ready for moments like this, calculating, planning, taking. I realized then that if I wanted to protect what little I had left, I'd have to fight their way. So I did. We filed an injunction to block the sale. I gathered every receipt, every tax payment, every bank statement proving I'd paid for everything since Dad died. For weeks, I barely slept, spending my nights at a friend's apartment, surrounded by boxes of documents and old photos. When the court date arrived, my siblings showed up dressed like royalty. Martha in a sleek black dress, Greg in a tailored suit, both pretending to be grieving children just trying to honor their mother's wishes. I sat across from them in a worn-out jacket, clutching a folder of evidence. Their lawyer went first, painting them as loving, dutiful kids, simply trying to fulfill their late mother's will. Then it was my turn. My voice trembled at first, but as I spoke, something in me hardened. I told the judge about the late nights, the endless caregiving, the sacrifices. I showed photos of Mom in her chair, smiling weakly as I fed her soup. I showed utility bills with my name on them, dated years after my siblings left. Finally, I handed over the deed, the refinance papers with my signature. "I didn't take this house," I said quietly. "I saved it, and I saved her." Saved. The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge looked moved. When the ruling came, it wasn't perfect, but it was justice. The house would be legally recognized as partially mine, enough to prevent them from selling it without my consent. They'd have to buy me out if they wanted to move forward. Martha's face turned crimson. Greg stormed out before the judge even finished speaking. I just sat there, exhausted, numb, but finally at peace. But peace doesn't last long when you're dealing with people who only know how to take. Over the next few months, they made my life hell. Martha spread rumors around town that I'd taken advantage of Mom's condition. Greg sent threatening letters claiming I'd robbed them. Some relatives even stopped speaking to me, choosing to believe their polished lies over my tired truth. One night I drove back to the house to clear out a few of Mom's old things I'd stored in the shed. The porch light was off, and the air smelled of rain. As I stepped inside, I noticed something strange. The family photo wall was gone. Every picture that had me in it had been removed. It was as if I never existed. That's when it really hit me. They hadn't just stolen property. They'd stolen my place in the family. I sat on the floor of that empty living room and cried harder than I had in years. Not because I lost a house, but because I realized the truth. I'd spent half my life protecting people who'd already stopped loving me long ago. After that night, I made a decision. I sold them my share, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. With that money, I moved 2 towns over, bought a small cabin near the lake, and started fresh. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time in 15 years, I could wake up without guilt, without duty, without fear of what someone might take next. I still keep one thing from that house, Mom's old blanket. It sits on my couch, worn and frayed. Sometimes, when the nights get cold, I wrap myself in it and think about her. How proud she would have been to see me finally stand up for myself. Do I forgive my siblings? I don't know. Some betrayals don't heal, they just scar over. But I've learned something important. Blood might connect us, but it doesn't define us. Because at the end of the day, family isn't who shares your last name, it's who shows up when life breaks you, and I think Mum knew that. Maybe that's why she always smiled when she said I was her good boy. So if you're out there watching this, and you've ever been made to feel small by the very people who should have protected you, remember this: you are not weak for walking away. You're strong for surviving what they did to you. Thanks for staying with me through this story. I hope it reminds you that even when blood betrays, there's still life and peace waiting beyond the pain. If you've lived through something similar, share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because here we tell the stories others are too afraid to.